Hello Tottenham St John's, it's Mrs PA here. As some of you will know, I lead maths across the school, and one of my biggest passions in teaching is about developing fluency. Now that sounds like quite a complicated thing, but basically it means setting you up to be a mathematician for life, and it's using those skills that we value as we get older. So you may not feel like you're going to use maths when you get older, but actually you're going to use it every day. It might be when you're shopping or working out a bill, you're measuring something, you're trying to work out how many of something you need for a party or so on. Maths is in our lives every single day. So at school we try to work on those key maths number skills and number facts, I suppose, that you need to know, and you need to know them in a way where you don't have to work them out. So we're looking at being really fluent. That means being able to answer a question like, what is 7 add 5, without having to use our fingers or something else to count. So the way we do that is just to practice. And I'm going to suggest to you some different activities that you can do at home using things that I think most of you will have maybe hidden away in some cupboards or even as part of some games. Okay, so we're going to work on developing fluency. That means having a good recall, so a good memory of number facts like number bonds to 10, times tables and things like that. And lockdown is perfect for this because you'll have people around you, hopefully, that can help you to practice, but it is something that you can do independently. So just as a reminder, to be fluent is to be able to answer these kinds of questions without having to work them out. And the faster you can do that, the easier you will find maths as you get older, because you'll be able to apply those skills to problem solving. So it might be about working out how much somebody has spent. So rather than spending loads of time adding numbers together and trying to work out the answer, you can really focus on what you need to do. So that's our idea for today's challenge. Okay, so playing cards. Now hopefully at home you will have, as part of a game or maybe just as a pack of playing cards, something that you might do with your family. So I'm going to be suggesting some games that you can play with playing cards. Now you might be able to share on your class story other games that you can play, but I would, as a start, think about laying all the cards flat down. Now there's 52 cards in a pack, but I haven't got room to put all of them out, but I've just done that to show you what I would start off by doing. Now the wonderful thing about these activities is that you can start at any level. So if we're looking here, I've hidden my screen just to talk you through this carefully. So if I was playing with somebody who wasn't very confident with number, I might start by turning over one card, and maybe their game will be about trying to find the same number, so trying to match all the number twos together and make a pile of those. Okay, that might be something that you start with. You could move on to just trying to get your child to sort the playing cards. So you might put all the black cards together, and then you might then group all the red cards together. You could extend this by then looking at trying to group them by individual suits. So all the spades, the clubs, the diamonds and the hearts together. Okay, so that's where you might put the spades together, so for the 2 and the 4. You might extend this. If your child is looking to practice sequencing numbers, you might get them to turn over one card, like the 2, and see if they can find the next number up from it. So looking for a 3. Now you can make the rules up to these games as much as you like. So it may be you don't use the whole deck. It may be that you're getting your child to try and find the 3 of spades. It just depends at where their starting level is. But you can use cards, as I said, for anything. So we can move it on, and we can think about actually practicing number bonds to 10. So rather than just getting your child to recite that 5 and 5 make 10 and 1 and 9 makes 10, turn it into a game and see if they can find pairs of numbers that make 10. So 2 and 8 obviously make 10. Okay, moving on, you might want to extend your child, or you might be a child who's ready for a bit of a challenge, and you might turn 3 cards over. Now, if I'm looking here, I'm always trying to look for numbers that I can add together easily. So I'm thinking, if I look at these numbers, I know 3 and 7 jump out at me because they make 10. I can then add 10 and 5 together really easily. Whereas if I try to add 5 and 7 together, I might find that quite tricky and might make a mistake, but it would definitely take me longer. So what you're trying to do is to get your child to recognise those number bonds to 10, or those numbers that add together really easily. It might be, when you're playing this game, that your child is trying to find cards that add up to 20. Okay, so you could just be turning 3 random cards over, or even 4 random cards, and trying to get your child to add them together. Or it might be they're trying to get to a specific total. Now, these games can be played as part of a group, and it's always lovely to have a bit of competition. It makes the game go a bit faster and makes it a bit more interesting. However, if you can't support your child to do this, you can just give them a calculator if they're a little bit older so that they can check that they're correct. Okay, so moving on. We've done addition. Now you could use it for times tables. So it might be that you lay all the cards out flat and you can get your child to turn over 2 cards and multiply them together. Again, we're looking for that really fast recall. So it might be if your child is learning a particular times table at the moment, you take out some of the other cards, which is absolutely fine. However, you might just leave it to random like this and be 2 multiplied by 8 or 8 multiplied by 2 is 16. Again, if your child is correct, they might keep their cards. But again, you can adapt and change these games that I'm suggesting and make it work for your family. Okay, you might not want to lay the cards out all together. You might just want to have a deck of cards, so a pile like this, and just turn over 2 cards and get your child to add them together, multiply them, whatever you want to do. Now, again, it might be that your child then has to then add 4 numbers together. Now, obviously with cards we have the picture cards here, so we've got the king, the queen and the jack, and you also might have jokers. It's up to you how you use this. You might say that all of the picture cards are worth 10 and take the jokers out. It might be you want to make it a bit more interesting and that when the joker comes out you have to double everything, or it might be that you lose your go. Again, you can be really creative about how you use playing cards. Now, as I said, the idea is that you make this as fun as you can. So if you can adapt some of the rules, if you can come up with your own game, again, share it on Class Story and then we'll share it across the school so that some people can have a go at it and let you know how they get on. I used to teach a girl who every night before she went to bed, her dad would give her a pack of playing cards and she'd have to turn over 2 at a time and she'd have to tell her dad what the times table answer was. So say for example she turned over a 5 and a 6, she'd have to say 30, and they would do that every single night and she would set a timer and she would time how far she could get through the whole deck, and she was one of the fastest children at times tables that I ever taught, and that's because she practiced every single day. She really enjoyed playing it, and then eventually her brother joined in and it became like a family competition. Okay, so again with playing cards there's so many different things that you can do. Right, moving on to dice. Loads of games that have dice inside them, and generally what we're looking at is dice like this. It's really good for children who are not confident using dice to be able to recognise that as 3, so not to have to count the dots. So if your child is still counting, that's fine, but you want to work with them to see if they can actually just say the number 3 or the number 5 and know that it's 5 rather than counting the dots. So that might be a place where you want to start. But again, getting them to say 3 add 1 makes 4. Okay, moving on. This is a picture of a set of dice that I have in my cupboard at school, and you can see there's all manner of dice there going into the thousands, looking at the hundreds, dice with different operations on so that you can throw them and see what you need to do with the numbers. Again, this is the dice that we're most familiar with when we're playing games, and then we've got numbers, and then there's all different kinds. And what I'm going to say to you at the end is I'm happy to lend some of these out, but I will give you some more information about that in a moment. So dice don't just look like one kind. So now I've moved on from rather than the dots, I've got the numbers. So again, getting your child to roll the dice and to add those numbers together really quickly, not so they're having to work them out. Now it's really good to start with 2 6-sided dice because actually you want your child to be really fluent. So you want them to be able to roll the dice and probably give you an answer within about 5 seconds. Okay, so they're not having to sit there, use their fingers or to count on and back. You want them to know these facts rather than have to work them out. So that would be a place that I would start. Now, one of the most popular things that I taught in Year 6 was something called a dice game, and you may have brothers and sisters or other children that have been in my class, and it was one of the noisiest parts of the day. However, it was amazing at getting the children to be more fluent. So we would play the dice game and we would throw a certain amount of dice, and it depends how confident the children were. Some of them worked with 6-sided dice and some of them moved on looking at dice with higher numbers on. Now the idea would be you would play with somebody and you would make a competition of it. So if you looked at those 3 dice, you would try to add them together as quickly as you can. Now in my class we used to only be able to have one go at it, so that stopped people from just guessing or rushing it, but you would look and see what you would get as an answer. Now, if I'm looking at these numbers, they are quite tricky. So I would be doing something probably like, I know 7 add 7 is 14. So double 7 is 14. So 7 add 8 must be one more, and that makes it 15. And now 15 add 5 is 20. Now, the idea is, yes, it's a bit of a competition, but actually what should happen is that when the person who answers it first, the other person should say, prove it. And the idea behind that is that they are sharing their way of finding out the answer faster than you. So you can then use that strategy next time, and hopefully it will improve your fluency. Okay, and then as I said, we've got other dice that we can throw. So I'd be looking there and I'd be thinking, hang on a minute, 10 and 5 is 15. I'd think about that 8 as 5 and 3. So hopefully you agree that 5 and 3 is 8. So I would be saying 15 add the 5 would be 20. Then I've got 3 more, so that makes it 23, and then I'd add the 1,000. Okay, hardly any of you, I'd be very surprised if any of you had dice with the thousands on. But as I was saying, there are lots of different kinds of dice, and maybe you might be lucky that you've got a game with dice that go up to a higher number. Okay, so as I said, just to be really clear, the most important part of the dice game that we used to play in year 6 was that prove it part. I didn't mind who won or who got the most amount of points, or whether you got more points than yesterday and so on. We'd talk about that progress, but the key to the learning was about prove it, because actually if somebody's got it faster than you, they're obviously using a different strategy that works for them, and it might end up working for you. Okay, the last question I'm going to leave you with is, what can I do if I don't have playing cards or dice at home? So you've got lots of different opportunities. It may be that you've got some Christmas money left and you might be able to get some playing cards and dice. Otherwise, you could make some playing cards at home. So it doesn't have to have the hearts and the diamonds and things. It might just be number cards that you use. That's a really good resource that any child can help make. Again, with dice, what I'm going to do when I go back into school this week, I will leave my set of dice up at the office, and when you come on your library day, so it's your class's turn to come to the office to change your books, I will leave the dice there, and then perhaps you could borrow some and then return them once you finish with them. But I'd really like you to challenge yourself to become more fluent with your number facts. So that might be, if I recap, that might be sequencing numbers, it might be grouping numbers, so finding all the number 2s and putting them together, number 5s. It might be looking at colours on playing cards and grouping in that way. Okay, and then moving on, we might be looking at number bonds to 10 and 20, or just adding 3 or 4 numbers mentally in your head, looking for the pairs of numbers or sort of 3 or 4 numbers that you can add together quite quickly. And then moving on, it might be looking at times tables and just developing that fluency. So it's facts that you know that you don't have to work out. Okay, good luck, and let us know how you got on.